Hi everyone, and welcome to the third of my videos interviewing people who are doing great things in the legal profession. Today I'm delighted to be joined by Martin Whitehorn. I'm sure a lot of people watching will already know who Martin is, but for those who don't, Martin is a residential property solicitor at Julie West Solicitors, who have a wonderful office down in Leatherhead. He's also the chair and national JLD rep of the Surrey Junior Lawyers Division. Hi Martin.
Hi there, Sine.
So, Martin, if you could start off by telling us a bit about yourself and your journey into law.
Well, regarding my journey into law, like I think half the people who went into law, I didn't initially do law as an undergraduate degree. I did English, but found that an English degree was in precious little demand among employers. And I was washing dishes and thought I'd rather have been a profession that is respected and my skills would be in demand. So went to do the graduate diploma in law and then the legal practice course, LLM, to become a solicitor. And like many, the person's not so unusual. I wasn't also applying for that much work experience or vacation schemes or training contracts, since a bit like when I came out doing my English degree, I thought, oh, I've got a degree now, surely employers will be only too happy to give me a job. And I was also focusing on paid work along my studies. So during the legal practice course, I was working at a probation hostel, a bit like a prison that you need staff there 24/7, working 12-hour shifts to help high-risk offenders get back into society as they approach the end of their sentences. And this is relevant to my journey into law because whilst it wasn't particularly legal work, I was doing a lot of the things that are relevant to law. So when I was applying for paralegal jobs where I could work my way up, I emphasised that I was always the first to answer the telephone or onto the door at the probation hostel, and I expected to do the same there. And also confidentiality, that we think we've got to keep things confidential in law, but working in a probation hostel, not only do you have to keep confidential from each of the residents what crimes they'd done, because in the case of sexual offences that could lead to repercussions to those individuals. We also had to keep their surnames secret from each other so that they couldn't then look up at each other and find out what they had done. And with the risk of any repercussions happening, that might have been your fault because you let a name slip. And so if I had to compare it to law, it would be like, imagine if all your clients lived at your place of work and you not only had to keep each other's matters confidential from them, but also their identities confidential from each other.
So quite difficult.
Yes, manageable, but you've always got to keep on your toes.
Yeah.
And it doesn't help if a taxi driver says, "Oh, it says they're picking up a Mrs. X," and you try to say very quietly, "It's a Mr. SX." So because they were loudly shouting out someone's surname.
Yeah.
Also assessing risk is a key part of what we both do in law and also the probation hostel. So let's take sex offenders again. So let's say convicted paedophile comes forward and says, "Oh, I want to attend a church this coming Sunday." And you take a look at the church he says he wants to attend, and you find that the day he wants to attend is the sort of family Sunday once a month where young children are encouraged to attend. Another thing to bear in mind regarding risk, there's also transferable into law. But I think but also a key thing I learned from there that I applied in my search to become a lawyer, and nothing criminal before you jump to conclusions. But it was that the residents there, being high-risk offenders, suddenly come out of prison, naturally they found it very hard to get jobs. But what stood out to me is how they would, in short, network, what we emphasize during aspiring lawyers all the time. Just get out there, talk to people, whether whilst they were doing their shopping or whatever, just ask about opportunities, whether at newsagents, at a supermarket, fast food place, wherever, just talk to the employees and ask about what it's like working there and any opportunities that might be there. And which I also try to apply to law by keeping an eye out for any openings, even if they weren't advertised, because I think jobs can be a bit like mentor schemes. That's for those that are publicized. There's a lot of competition, but if you can sometimes a speculative inquiry can get you the first in line to someone, whether it be a mentor or, in my case, a job. Because I don't know about the people listening to this call, but the thing that I kept coming up against when trying to find jobs where I could work my way up in law was, oh, well, we'd love to have someone with your experience, entry-level job, full training provided. Or if you just have 6 to 12 months experience in a law firm, not in any other work environment, in a law firm. Or now I understand that apparently those are more wishes, like to haves rather than must haves. So perhaps I should have tried those jobs. But Julie West Solicitors was one of the few that didn't just copy and paste that requirement. And in fact, I've been surprised they did, because the job they were advertising for when I came across them was office assistant, which just required, it didn't require anything in the way of legal work. It was very much an administrative role. But I thought, well, if they've got an opening for an office assistant, surely there must be some opening for someone like me. And so I got in touch and said, all right, so we're looking for an assistant. Do you have anything perhaps more suited for an LPC LLM graduate who is looking for a training contract? To which the response was, oh, yes, we were about to advertise for a legal assistant role. Do you want to apply to an interview? I did. I interviewed. I got the job. And in my employment contract, it said that if you're with us for this many months, you'll be a trainee solicitor. I was with them that many months. I became a trainee solicitor. I qualified in July 2020, when before the SRA set up its qualification portal, and when I interviews the emails the SRA with my application details to qualify kept bouncing back, which yes, we got around it in the end, and here I am almost 2 years later. So Julie West Solicitors, I'm very happy to be there.
Yeah. No, it's really nice to hear, and I think there was a lot of advice there for aspiring lawyers. The transferable skills, you don't need to have been working in a law firm, and also just sort of almost having the guts to just approach a firm that might not be hiring for a paralegal, but saying, well, this is what I've got to offer, is there a job for me? Because see, it worked out for you. So yeah, I think that's definitely really positive advice. So thank you for sharing that.
Oh, thank you. It's possibly a winding story, but I guess like our roots into law wasn't straightforward.
Yeah, definitely, because I think there is a misconception that, I'm sure there's a lot of people who do just go from degree, LPC, and then go straight into a law firm, but it's not that simple, I think, for the majority of us. So yeah, it's definitely good to have people that other aspiring lawyers can look up to, that are saying, no, it wasn't a straightforward route, but here I am and practicing. Yeah, definitely very positive. So obviously I mentioned at the start as well that you're the chair and national rep of Surrey JLD, and you were also previously the social media rep as well. I know you've been on the committee a lot longer than I have, so it would be great to hear, how did you first get involved with Surrey JLD? And I believe there were Surrey Young Lawyers initially at one point.
Yes, young Surrey lawyers.
That's it.
Although I think there was something, among other things, there's an issue with the copyright because YSL is also apparently what stands for Yves Saint Laurent. But so yes, I helped change it from Young Surrey Lawyers to Surrey JLD, and how I first got involved with Surrey JLD. So I don't think I've had heard at all of the junior lawyers division or any of the local groups like what's now Surrey JLD until February 2019. That I was just one of my colleagues in my work said, "Oh, there's a Young Surrey Lawyers in the Guildford area. It's nice for you to meet up other people." And being the only trainee on my firm, I definitely wanted to meet up with other people. And so I was looking at their social media, and I thought, are they still active? Because their Twitter page, for example, nothing had been posted for a while. The LinkedIn page, there was one, but I was perhaps one of 2 or 3 followers, and there were no posts at all. And so, but then I found they were active. They did have an event coming up, so I went along to that. And soon afterwards, they were advertising for committee members, and I was thinking of their social media and thinking I could do a better job, and I also got the skills to do a better job. That my local council was doing free digital marketing for small businesses, and so I took advantage of that for Julie West Solicitors, but so with an eye on possibly joining what was then Young Surrey Lawyers. And so I made my application to Young Surrey Lawyers. I got the position, and I've changed what, as I said, over the years, an account that had a handful of followers, no posts at all, to one that's about 1,172 followers last I checked.
Yeah.
Been going up at the rate about 450 a year.
Wow.
And thank you very much. And so by applying the digital marketing training that I obtained, and also by just practicing, seeing things that worked. For example, I noticed that so often people put links to events near the bottom of a post or perhaps the middle, but one thing that seemed to happen time and again was that if I kept the links to events like in the first, second, or even third line before the sort of see more section on LinkedIn, that's when people would actually click on it because they could see the link. That I think a lot of people aren't used to the see more option on LinkedIn, maybe. And so I applied those skills for Surrey JLD as one of the social media publications reps, focusing on LinkedIn, and which I appreciated very much because it got me the opportunity to talk about how wonderful the main junior lawyers division, which supports and promotes the interests of aspiring junior lawyers, and the local groups like Surrey JLD are in providing a community where people, particularly if you feel like me, perhaps the only trainees at their firms might feel otherwise isolated, can get together. And so, yes, I could continue as to how I developed along Surrey JLD, but I think the question was just how did I first get involved? So I'll stop there before I continue on, because I definitely
well, actually, that follows quite nicely onto my next question, which is obviously we met through Coco with the committee, which feels like so long ago. It was about 2 years ago now. And that was actually your creation. So if you could talk a bit more about that.
Oh yes, because it been in early May 2020, there was the first Coco. And so Coco with the committee, so when the lockdown came along, and I definitely was feeling miserable, we were due to have a mental health event in March 2020, and then we couldn't. And I think the government's SAGE groups says that we could expect such disruption for 12 to 18 months if things went reasonably well. And so I had no hope that anything would return to normal anytime soon. And whilst feeling miserable, I thought, well, other people are probably feeling as miserable as me, and useful for us to get together. So I set up Cocoa with the committee, which is just a Zoom call for aspiring junior lawyers to get together, connect, and chat where we otherwise couldn't. And gradually and so you're the very first person to attend that first Cocoa, and the only one. And I'm glad to see how both you and Coco have developed since. With Coco, it went from being just a general meetup to focusing on specific things like networking, well-being, all the way to what now we've been focusing on specific areas of law, so aspiring trainee lawyers get a better understanding what it's like to work in those areas of law. And for example, having you being one of the speakers on the personal injury and clinical negligence Coco, and similarly with you from the trainee attending her first Surrey JLD meeting to now one of our most active committee members, particularly in light of the Mental Health Awareness Week events you've been pioneering.
Thank you. We're here to talk about you, not me. But yes, no, I mean, definitely, I'm really grateful to Coco with the committee. Like you say, you started them up as someone who was the only trainee in your firm. At the time, as you know, I was furloughed, so I felt so isolated, and just stumbling across the LinkedIn post that you put up, introducing the Cocoa with the committees, and I thought, oh, this sounds like a good idea. And then, yeah, here we are 2 years on. So yeah, it's definitely been really positive. So I appreciate that.
And another reminder of me to be proud of how far I've done with the LinkedIn post, that we're actually reaching people.
Yeah, absolutely. So long may that continue. And obviously we'll discuss all the brilliant things that you've done, which that then led to you winning the Surrey Law Society Rising Star of the Year award. So if you could tell us a bit more about how that came about.
Certainly. Well, with the Rising Star of the Year award, when I saw it advertised around this time last year, that I had a look at what it was described, and I think it must have been a recent issue of the Surrey Lawyer. And what stood out to me was that whilst the other entries focus on specific practice areas and talk about exceptional client outcomes, that's the Rising Star of the year talk about contributing to the wider legal profession as a whole. And on reflection, I thought, well, that during the lockdowns there was the Cocoa. Also, during the lockdowns in July 2020, I'd on my own put together or rather organise Surrey JLD, Surrey Law Society, the University of Law in Guildford, and the University of Surrey Law School in a sort of virtual roundtable with the SRA to talk about the Solicitors Qualifying Examination, or SQE, as I personally like to pronounce the abbreviation. So to discuss issues with the SQE and suggest alternatives, which the SRA gave their position and moved on. But so I was thinking as well that not just with the Cocoa and my roundtable with the SRA, but where I've also felt I'd achieved things. So supporting aspiring junior lawyers. There was even one newly qualified solicitor who approached me about being pressured to by a partner in her department to lie about a date of a document. so I directed her to appropriate resources to make sure she was open about that issue, and to refuse to enter into that deception, which particularly I think pertinent with recent cases like Claire Matthews and Savani James on people's minds. And so she's since moved to another firm and feels a lot better for having reached out to me. And so I was thinking to myself, well, contributing to the wider legal profession, and I also add that another thing I've been doing during the lockdowns was meeting up with other local JLDs to swap information on the obstacles we were facing and how we were overcoming them, because that was, as well as the feelings of isolation. Another thing I was very concerned about was that I'm happy to keep Surrey JLD active during the pandemic and make sure we come out thriving, rather than just surviving. I fear that with other local JLDs, they might just diminish into dormancy and then just be gone forever. And so I was keen to meet other the local JLDs, swap knowledge, and make sure we were keeping active, so we'd be all the stronger after the pandemic. And so with all that, I couldn't help thinking, well, I'm not sure who else has been contributing to at least the junior end of the profession as much as me among the Surrey Law Society members. So I put in my application describing what I'd done. And so if anyone interested in applying for similar awards, that there's very much a focus on providing evidence of what you've done to help people. And so I'd say what I did was invite to quite a few aspiring junior lawyers I'd assisted and said, oh, could you perhaps leave me a LinkedIn recommendation or a message saying, well, what I've done. And I think I've got about 30 saved, which I submitted with my application. And then we went on to the award, and I was sitting there thinking, oh, I don't think I'll win. I can see it, that one of the other consultants I think had recently made partner at a firm, and I assumed that she would have done all manner of other things for the profession. But not only did I win, I was also the clear winner. There were no runner-ups.
That's brilliant.
Yes. So I don't think it's. I'm not entirely sure it's still sunk in. That's.
Of course, you met Judge Rinder as well at that event, didn't you?
That's yes, but he was very complimentary about my efforts.
No, that's good. Talking more about you and not obviously Judge Rinder, you've been very vocal about the fact that you have autism as well. I know you mentioned it in some COCOs as well, and also in last week's Mental Health Awareness Week panel event, you opened up about that as well, which is really good. How, if you could share a bit about how you started sort of disclosing the fact that you have autism, sort of firstly to your employer and then to the wider profession.
So regarding disclosing my autism, that for me, it didn't occur at first to mention my autism. This probably stems from when I was first diagnosed quite young. And the people who diagnosed me told my mother, oh, your son Martin, he's probably not going to have the life you would want for him. He's probably not going to get a good job, get married. And that was the most cutting thing for my mother was, he will never understand how you feel. To which she instantly knew that was rubbish. Apparently my favorite book at the time was When Mummy Turned Into a Monster, about misbehaving children who, as their mother gets angrier and angrier about their shenanigans, that she becomes more and more monstrous. Grows a long nose, turns green, grows claws and a tail. and my mum noted that possibly not entirely as a result of that, but I was very much considerate of her feelings, and that I wasn't upsetting her. Whether I thought she would be turning into a monster as well is another question. I know for I certainly didn't like red apples at the time, because I'd seen Snow White and thought they were all poisonous, and so I'd only liked green apples. And so we sort of fed to a lot of my life not bothering to mention my autism to anyone, because like many autistic people, I've been working so hard to try to fit in with everyone else. Some elements quicker than others. So, for example, masking, that I try not to do too much masking now, but often I feel when I'm doing facial expressions, it's quite performative. It can be helpful for socializing with people. He said raising his eyebrows to make him sort of look more engaged with what he was saying, rather than the same sort of blank monotone expression. But because I think it is useful for emphasizing to people facial expressions that you are interested in what they're saying, even if it may feel performative on my part, but it's very much me wanting to show that I am happy about this, or I am concerned about this. And so it feels like a lot more effort on my part than others. But and so in a way I'm more fortunate than others in that it's, I think, as my colleagues mentioned, that I would never have thought you were autistic, because so I'm relatively mild, but so I did experience my autism whilst working at Julie West Solicitors, and my phone was very positive. We had a day devoted to training about autism, which I think, as well as helpful for my colleagues, also helpful for me, because the training involved a lot of recounting of people's experiences of what they found helpful. And so I think a key thing that stood out for me was finding it's disconcerting when people call out of the blue without explaining what they're calling about, or that they were calling at all. Granted, it's something that I try to work on, but can be so helpful for people to be aware of that. And so I say my experiences were very positive. And so, as often with my clients, I'll disclose I've autism. One, so for example, if to highlight that it might be helpful for me if they don't call out of the blue, otherwise it would take longer for my brain to process what's going on. But also, it also helps, I think, open up clients to be honest with me. At least on one occasion, a client has disclosed that she was dyslexic, and I say more on one occasion because the dyslexic clients were both women. But by being open about my being a neurodivergent, I think it encourages others to do the same, where they might otherwise hide it. And whilst I didn't disclose my autism to my employer from the get-go because it didn't occur to me, I would encourage anyone, whether you're a junior lawyer or aspiring, to readily disclose any condition to an employer, disability, physical, it could be neurodivergent like me, it could be invisible disability, but the important thing is to disclose it, because gosh, you may think, oh, surely they might think less of me, and I want the job, and as long as I'm in there, then they can't do anything about it when I say that I have this disability and need reasonable adjustments. The issue is that will the firm be supportive of you? because there are firms which could definitely improve. And working for a firm that isn't particularly used to or open to reasonable adjustments is going to be a lot more difficult than there's any right to be. And also it's just generally you're just doing yourself a disservice that for firms that are only too happy to help you, and they much rather help you the sooner the better.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you covered the rest of my question, or a few of my questions in that as well. It's because you've sort of obviously gone into the difficulties as well, having autism as a lawyer, but also the positive as well that you do bring. And I think you're absolutely right that people should feel comfortable with disclosing as well, because if you feel that you can't disclose to your employer, then is that really a firm you want to work for? So yeah, great advice there.
Thank you. That's in terms of, I think, a key positive of my autism. That I would say perhaps what I feel particularly stands out to me in terms of autism is perhaps maybe a childish or naive sense of justice and fair play in terms of that when feeling lonely during the lockdowns and thinking this is so upsetting, I also very much felt that, well, it's not just me that this is a whole situation is unfair to, it's everyone else. And so made me very much want to help people who I understood to be feeling just as I was feeling.
Yeah, definitely. Okay, well, I can see we're running out of time, so I'll go into my final question before I let you go, which is something that I like to ask everyone that I speak to. And what is your top tip for looking after your mental health and well-being?
It's hard to choose any particular one, but if I choose one, I think I'm watching a Junior Lawyers Division forum a while back, in which Eloise Skinner, one of the speakers, said, which spoke to me quite a bit, that looking after your mental health and well-being, it doesn't have to involve cold showers, early morning runs, yoga, meditation. It can be as simple as just talking to someone you love every day. And so I think we get focused on a lot of what we think looking after mental health and well-being ought to be, and less on this simple things like, for example, talking to make time for someone you love.
Yeah, that's lovely. What a nice way to end this video. So yes, that's just want to say thank you very much, Martin, for your time today, and to everyone watching as well, and see you all soon.
Thank you for having me.